Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the ADDARMY, and today I want to bring another off-the-cuff video focusing on a topic that I've really wanted to talk about in a long time, which is Digimon. So if you guys actually don't know, for my content, I've always wanted to duel back and forth, and if you look at most of my content starting off on this channel, it's mostly Digimon related. That was mostly because I'm actually a big Digimon fan. I've never been I would say the most dedicated fan, to the point where I'm I know everything. I know a good amount. I know an amount more than most. And yeah, I wouldn't say I pride myself in it in a bad way or a good way. I would say more I'm just happy I know about it because it's actually a very fascinating media choice. Because unlike most of the different, I would say genre of maybe this monster based thing from Japan where it focuses more on children, Digimon is one of the only series I think I've ever actually kind of seen, besides maybe Yu-Gi-Oh, that is able to maybe or actually go back and forth between kids, teenagers, and adults. It's really strange because most of the this genre of stuff doesn't really go back and forth. For those who are probably going to say adults play Pokemon, stuff like that. I'm yeah, I know that. But if you're going to tell me that Pokemon was meant for adults, it's there's been some media that we've been getting in the last couple of years. And then they've been, I think a big leap forward, I think, with what they're doing with Horizons, kind of arguingly going after the tween to kids era, which is I think a really good age range to go for. But yeah, Digimon is one of the only franchises from Japan, I think, that's that's really been able to grab the attention of all of them. And the reason why is, unlike something like One Piece, which I'm just started to become a bigger fan in, I still need to watch every episode. But my point is, with something like One Piece, it's definitely more of an adult theme for sure. I would really find it strange if someone said, oh yeah, One Piece is for kids. I mean, it can be with Dreams, but if you watch the Japanese version, subbed, everything, we're not talking about the dub, the original dub that was for kids. So that thing was an abomination after I started watching some One Piece. But the point is, if we really look at them, I would definitely say that One Piece is meant for adults to teenagers, not really meant for kids because there's some really deep themes there. But Digimon is one of those weird franchises that really straddles between all three. I don't know if that's the phrase of someone saying being good at a jack of all traits is a master of nothing. But I do think Digimon has an allure that just, for some reason, I think Bandai just doesn't carry all the time. So what I mean by this is, if you were to look at I guess the Digimon games, some of their themes are very dark and very more towards the teen to adult side. I think if you played anything like Cyber Sleuth, or you've played even the new or recently new Digimon Survive, you start to see where Digimon has this different vibe than a lot of the other games. I just think we haven't seen media for it, because I know it's one of the hardest parts of designing something, right? Say they made a Digimon, I wouldn't say adult, but a teenage variant anime. Man, I mean, there is dying in Digimon, it happens a lot. But if you were to tell me they made more an adult themed one where it's a little bit more grisly, there's a lot more difficult things to deal with, it's wow, it could really take off. I just think that maybe Bandai is trying to figure out what they want to do with Digimon. I mean, I personally think they should go down this route of making it more a teenager thing to between kids. And the reason why is I mean, going full into adult would be kind of difficult, because although they could do that, it would need to be its own thing. But if they wanted to do something for kids and teenagers, I think aiming for teenagers but also marketing to kids is perfect. I think Ghost Game had the right type of feel, but its biggest problem was it didn't feel like there was any direction for it. It was a really good series if you wanted to understand how Digimon can actually be. It can focus on kid themes, and then one next minute it's a super adult theme with the death is savage, and then you get to themes that are not necessarily always going to be kid friendly. A good example is the episode I think of is the Shaydramon one. I also think about the one with Make Crackmon with Obsession. I think that was a really strange one that kind of makes you think. There's the episode with the ADDARMY and It's like having falling for a girl, even though it's like a digital being. It's like really strange concepts that, Digimon can actually pull off, whereas like the other different brands can't really do. I think it's probably because the nature of Digimon isn't necessarily tied to a game, and that might be it as well. Like, Pokemon is obviously focused on, battles and all that stuff that relates to it, and Yu-Gi-Oh and other games are usually they're usually their animes tied to their games, so it really hinders their ability for variety, I think. Even though I think Yu-Gi-Oh's strongest thing is that sometimes they can write stories around the games because the games are very like integral to like the society and the environment. It's kind of like with why I think 5Ds as a whole is just extremely strong, because they think they did something very unique where Duel Monsters itself didn't just play a part of being the thing that people do, right? It's like it's a part of the society in a way that like ties people together. Like they really went out of their way to like make that whole stereotypical thing about people having bonds to each other. I really think they did that really well in 5Ds above like all the others, just because if you were to watch 5Ds, you kind of get like the whole bond thing between Crow, Jack, and Yusei, being the fact that they were tied together by their love of cards, but also because of the struggles that they shared. So it's like it shows the bonds that you form. All the other animes so far before that had like almost gotten that, like within Yu-Gi-Oh itself, the original series, you kind of get that, but not really. It's more focusing on how to be a good game, like being better at the game, but also, what matters, darkness in yourself. And then 5Ds, or not 5Ds, but GX itself is like a really different departure, but in the right direction. So I think each step until they got to 5Ds was exactly what they needed. Zexal's a little different. I think the problem with Zexal is kind of like what I always think for the black and white anime of Pokemon. It takes the wrong approach in trying to tell a story, in that it wants to restart when a character's progress has already been remade. So what I mean by that is like Yuma as a character is fresh, and they go about it, I would say, a bit better. I think the problem is you can't just have a massive departure from like Yusei's skill level to like Yuma's skill level without like doing a slow progression in. It's just one of those things that I think if you have a fan base and they want to be on a concurrent series, because what's going to happen is once the series ends and you start another series, those people are going to drop off. So they're expecting something there that's like not there once they get the new thing. But the whole point, it was never meant to be like the old thing that they liked in the first place. But when you do release new content, you have to find a way to bridge it somehow. I don't mean like making a direct connection or even like having this multiversal thing where, the characters from the last series show up. It's more of you got to connect some of the core tenets that made the last thing good to the next thing that's going to be either even better or supposed to be like superior or its brother, right? So the reason I bring these things up is I do think with Digimon, it's actually pretty interesting. I think a lot of the core tenets that are being worked into like different media can come together to make it work. Believe it or not, Digimon's media is actually pretty solid. I just think it has less exposure than the others because, I remember being a kid. I don't remember ever seeing like a Digimon manga in, I guess a bookstore. Those are kind of getting outdated, but bookstores were more focused about where I could get stuff like instead of online, because I was still one of those kids that like the internet wasn't readily accessible. But my point is simple. Digimon itself could easily capitalize it, because I do think the Digimon mangas are actually really good. If you've never read V-Tamer, I suggest reading V-Tamer. If you've never read the Savers one, which is based on Data Squad, I'd read that one. That one is actually like pretty crazy. If I had to be honest, it's like one of the mangas that's kind of like it kind of goes off the rails. Like if you like something like Pokemon Adventures over like what we had as our main stories, I think you'd like the V-Tamers for the Digimon. It kind of crosses really well with the situations that people like to see, and the more adult theme that the show possesses, that really helps out because it makes it a little bit more interesting. But the reason I want to talk about Digimon is that I've been slowing down in the Digimon content that I've been making, but it's mostly because I haven't fallen out of love with the card game. It's just I don't play it and I don't have the time to play it. but I love keeping up and watching it because I love the lore that expands in the game, and I really do like it. I just haven't had time. And the only reason I have more time for Yu-Gi-Oh is that all of my friends literally play Yu-Gi-Oh. So yeah, or they even know how to play. Like for my friends who have stopped playing, I can at least talk to them about what's going on. I can't really talk to them about what's going on in Digimon meta, right? But I can definitely, show them. They kind of like it. But yeah, the point is, I'm still going to make Digimon content. For some of the other videos, so the reason that I'm holding off on continuing Imperial Dramon's story, at least right now, is I'm wondering what the movie's going to do. This is maybe more of explaining how I theory craft for some of these videos if you want to know. I don't know if it's going to help you guys at all, but at least it shows like some of my thinking power if you're wondering. So originally when I started, I tried to take as much inspiration from lore that already existed, but was never really defined. And then I go and use something like the Digipedia or like the Wikipedia, or I try to find as many sources as are available that actually like work together to explain something, right? Like for my first Digimon video that focused on the four great dragons, one thing I found that was really interesting about their lore is that although they're like technically a group, they're not really talked about much. They only appear in a few of the lore for different Digimon that have to take the trial of the four great dragons. And I think that's really fascinating. But this is like one of the problems I have with Digimon is that when I explained to one of my friends about basically the Royal Knights, how the purge works, Yggdrasil, X-Antibody, all those periods of Digimon media, he asked, oh, wow, like, can I go watch that? Like, is there anything to show me that? And I said, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, is there like an anime for that? I said, that sounds insane. That sounds cool. Then I had to unfortunately tell him like, oh no, like the only thing he could watch is like X Evolution. However, X Evolution doesn't even cover all the Royal Knights because, it was made before that, before we got all of at least the current members that we have. So yeah, like I couldn't really push him in the direction to go look at that, even though like, he was like, that's insane. That's crazy. That's awesome. Like that sounds like such a cool, like Doomsday, also like survival Armageddon, type of story. He's like, I can only watch like one version of it in like X Evolution. And I was like, well, you could read the manga, but then it's like, it hasn't fully been translated to English. You'll have to look around online. I do think that kind of sucks, but point aside, what I'm trying to get at is what Bandai has is less expanded than it should, because I do think Digimon has the power to be great. Like what I meant with the Imperial Dramon stuff is like the reason I'm holding off is I want to see what the movie does. But the reason why, if there's going to be some lore implications that we haven't had before, I'd really love to implement it into the story. So I've been holding off. Also, the origins of Omega take place in that timeline. So I didn't want to just not finish more of Omegamon's story that I've been making, then go ahead and go straight to Imperial Ultramon's again, because they do line up. Because I do have a theory of, kind of what's going to happen. Essentially, guys, what I could have done is like break up this whole like what if series I've been doing and just like kind of put them together as like a bunch of theories, which like is possible, but I think it's less fun because now you don't get to structure out a story for you guys to kind of see how the process would be. I just think it's because most people are better at theory videos than I am, so because I'm new to this. But I do think that's kind of like where I want to be with it, is just I want to like break it down so that everyone can enjoy it and watch it. So that's kind of where I'm going with it with the Imperial Ultramon story, is just I want to have a good time with it. I want to like make it cool. I do have an end game in mind, so like, that's the key. But I do think that Omegamon's story has to kind of be almost complete before I like get to the end game, because they are integral to the completion of each other, but also to expand to how I think a singular Digimon universe would be. So that's kind of one thing I wanted to clear up, is that also gives some explanation to like mine. Is if whenever people discover it in the future or they go and see the videos, they're probably going to be like, yeah, it's like obviously headcanon, but I want it to like be the best way that if Digimon did want to go for like a singularity timeline that does exist, this would be like the best way to go about it. Because literally when I find a bunch of the media that supports that, like each different, Digimon series takes place in its own universe and kind of realm, except for like Zero Two and obviously Adventure because they're tied together. It's rather strange, but in a good way. I think it's cool because it kind of displays that the digital world is the link between every other universe, more or less than like say the human world, like Earth is the link between each of to the digital world, right? So the digital world's data keeps extrapolating and it keeps creating new variants, but it also allows it to connect to the digital worlds of these other Earths. So instead of us thinking that the Earth is like the connecting point to, all these different universes, it's actually the digital world that's the connection to every other, series, which is, I think, absolutely insane and fascinating. There's multiple theories explaining that like the digital world didn't exist before humans. There's some that say that the digital world had existed before humans, like as a parallel world, like a parallel dimension. However, my theory for this is like, I just want to put it in this video because I think it's a little bit easier for me to talk about, is that one of my theories was always that the digital world existed before humans, but it was because of human connection the digital world was able to evolve. And the reason I think that is like, if we look at how the digital world has different epochs in some of the Digimon, like they explains different periods, one thing that leads me to believe that this is a possibility is that when Digimon have specific periods of time that have specific data amounts, like different types of data, that means at some point they had to have accumulated data to turn it into actually what they need. Like they had to figure out what it was. It's like the idea that when you put something into a computer, it takes a second before it goes from wherever you're transferring it to the computer, right? So in vice versa, whatever the Digimon were taking, whatever the original creator was taking data from the human world, eventually it used it to like extrapolate it and then transfer it to the digital world where the data was utilized. So that's kind of how I view it. And the reason why I like that a bit better is that for the different canons, one thing I find that's strange is that the digital world doesn't have always the same different afflictions as it does in the other types of series. Like if you look at the Zero Adventure to Zero Two, the time in the digital world was different. So, once it ended, they had to leave, and then eventually it gets fixed in Zero Two. However, and when you get to Tamers, that doesn't seem to be an issue in the same sense. And when we get to something like Frontier, you start to notice that there is not really a time difference. In fact, it's almost like they go back in time to a degree, so that they end up on the first day that they would have gone to the digital world, instead of it being like how they traversed through it. And then maybe it's supposed to resemble like how computers processing speeds are so fast. It's not like related to human time. So literally in the split of a second, it could be like a year, right? So I don't rule that out either. But then it's like when we get to I would say Hunters is like the way I guess you would say it. You could say Cross Wars is finale, but when you get to Hunters, you finally see everyone show up. However, it gets explained that like through the Brave Snatcher, they're like all tied together because they all saved the world at a different time. So if that's true, like I tried to find an English description or like a video talking about it, but not everyone really talks about it. So this is just my theory about this, is that the Brave Snatcher itself is a connecting link between at least all the various digital worlds at the time. So each protagonist up until that point had added some type of contribution to link the digital worlds together. And the reason I think that is if you look at each protagonist that would be represented, you start to realize there's something special about each of them that links to others, whether it's goggles, not goggles, their Digimon, maybe their attitude. The point is they did something unique that links them to that, respective time. And I think what happens in Hunters is that it's like a nexus, because what was going to happen would basically like be the end of everything. It basically forced all these other worlds to come together, all these different universes, and their protagonists team up. And it almost seems seamless for everyone who's not a part of the Cross Wars and Hunters universe, which is really rather strange, as if maybe there's like a time that these different worlds and universes are fully connected. And honestly, that would make a lot of sense. The reason why is it would finally explain how Ken and Rio's friendship made sense, and that they were cross-dimensional. He's from the 02 universe, Rio is from Tamers, and they found the force. Well, I wouldn't say the force because I'm thinking about Star Wars guys, sorry, but like the nexus that like ties them together in the digital world. So that's the thing that's strange, is that means people can transverse across digital worlds and digital spaces. So it makes it even more complex. But my thing is, at that point, there was something that maybe they established that linked all the different worlds together. But I think the best way to look at it is the only reason they were able to appear in the digital world is maybe there was, a necessity, right? Because I do think that could like destabilize different worlds, or at least different Earths. If like different people from other Earths that like they don't technically existed would try to come through. But that's a whole other story for another time. It's kind of hard to explain that just because it's a little bit, we never got like Cross Wars or Hunters here. So if we had Hunters here, maybe dubbed, they could have tried to give like maybe more of an easier explanation. That probably falls into my next thing that I hate, is that like I know Digimon isn't like everybody's favorite thing, but it really deserves to have more adaptations. A lot of those things need to really come out more to the West, because I do think Digimon is able to take a spot alongside, the big three, not just in card games, but in media. Because one thing I think Konami's lacking in is we haven't had a Yu-Gi-Oh anime, but the Yu-Gi-Oh anime isn't really the point. We haven't had really like a manga either. And we haven't really had anything to draw the attention of, people outside of like the card game, right? And okay, regardless of like if you want to say like the card game's difficult, the card game's easy, we have all these different tools to teach people. Point is, some people just they're just not into everything in terms of just being able to play the card game. They want to do stuff. They want to know lore. They want to love it. Like that's kind of the thing that I like about Digimon. Its lore is insane because it's based off of like a lot of human lore, but also it's intertwined with like this insane type of way of approaching it. I think of it like how Pokemon has its own lore in terms of utilizing different mythologies and like creatures to like adapt into like legends, right? So good examples like the Swords of Ruin in Paldea, that they represent evil, but they're also like a parallel to the genies, or what I like to call them, like the elemental trio that's now a quartet. The point is, those Pokemon have like relations to each other. And then after I played the new DLC for Scarlet Violet, the whole Ogre Pond, and the Loyal 3 being based off of the Legend of Momotaro, like there's a lot there, right? Like that's a ton of stuff, but you have to like know. But there's a lot of people that like that stuff. Like they really like to have additional like lore, something to pull them in, right? Like I know a lot of people like certain decks because of lore. Like a good example is like the tier elements, like lore. I know some people that only play tier solely based on the fact that like they enjoy the lore that goes along with it. And vice versa. Like a good example is like I built a Chaos Gallantmon deck in Digimon from EX4 from Alternative Being. And the only reason I did it is that the lore is like low-key supporting one of my theories that, it will come out, it already came out in my story, but the point is like it supports what I thought, is that at some point you had Digimon fighting against each other, like these dark forces squaring off against Omegamon, and in literally Chaos Gallantmon's alternate art, he's literally fighting, Omnimon. I know people would say, oh, well, there was art before with like the stuff from BT5 and Battle of Omni, but I mean, like this looks like if I had a showdown in my what if lore, this would happen. And I'm like, wow, they have it. So, I take inspiration from what they do with the card arts. I just think it's really good. But then that's kind of like where I'm trying to ramp it up for like Digimon, like the hype train. Like I really like Digimon. I don't know if like any of you guys who are, watching do or don't. But the point is like there is a lot there. Like you want to like see some emotional train wreck scenarios, I would say watch like Tamers, and then watch like a certain episodes from a Ghost Game. You won't, I won't say you'll be tear jerking, but you'll get close to being really sad. Like there's some moments that really like get you, or there's some moments that move you, like some like get you to think. But they have their own quirkiness, which is like really unique. That's kind of the thing I like about Digimon, is that if you have really good writing, Digimon is like really cool. Like it really does, because unlike with, I guess like Pokemon's an example, your partners are more like pets, right? But like with Digimon, they're more like friends and companions to the point where like they're like people almost. Like they literally have their own life forms. They have their own way of like, communicating. They have their own culture. They're literally different beings, but because they pair up with humans, they have their own like individuality. They have their own like, quirkiness, their perks. They have like uniqueness, right? Like that's the thing I like is usually like stylistically, some Digimon partner up with people based on the fact that like, oh, like we have the same ambitions, the same goals. I know in like, other animes and stuff, that's like usually what happens. People are like, oh, they align together. But with Digimon, it's a bit different where it's like you have to align together, but also like be able to work together. Like you need to be a good fit. Like being in sync with your partner is massively important because it can increase the ability of them being able to digivolve, but also the power they possess. But also Digimon could just be buddies. Like I think it's like almost like the idea that like most people in Pokemon aren't really battlers. They just have Pokemon. And it's like in the digital world or Digimon, you could just have people have Digimon and not really battle. Like that's the cool thing. It's like Digimon can fight, they don't have to. So it's almost like people, like they can choose to if they want to. They can just decide to not do it, which is like really, really cool. So, that also is like a massive part of it. But I think in closing, where I want to talk about this is kind of like the reason I call it my Digimon update is like more Digimon content will be coming, guys. Like I'm not going to stop. So if you like my Digimon content and you want to see more, just give me some time. I'm going to get it done. But yeah, it's just been taking time because I've been trying to like work on Yu-Gi-Oh because clearly it's like the main thing. But like no, I want to keep doing multiple types of different content. The reason the what ifs have been taking a lot longer too, guys, like I just been busy. So like unfortunately, that's the thing that sucks. Like when I have more time, these videos take a lot more time. And I don't need to just say that. Like I know people who do better what ifs than me, obviously, and they take a lot of time, guys. Trust me. Like even for the level I do, and it's not even that. Like I would say the highest quality. It takes a lot of time still, guys. Like I still have to craft a story. I still have to make it make sense. I do all my like editing and stuff, so I have to like sit behind and like work it out with the images I want. I have to like stylistic it up. That's why like a lot of the backgrounds are like kind of similar. Like I'd like to change up the backgrounds, but like to be completely honest, I think about like a Digimon battlefield. It's pretty much the same thing usually when they're fighting. It's like they're going to be in the same areas. But like yeah, it just takes a lot of time, guys, and like that's kind of like my focus is like I'm trying to get them done. It's just going to take me a little bit longer, but I'm going to have more stuff out. I was thinking about doing Digimon theory videos. I mean, a lot of them exist, but like I still have a few. I guess my question is, if you are hearing this and you're all the way through up to this point, and you want to hear Digimon content, tell me how you like to get it, because I wouldn't mind doing them more in like these big off the cuff videos where I just talk about them. I could do one where it's like a little bit more edited but shorter. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that. It's just sometimes I really like to like go over the topic and really expand on it a bit, like how I did with kind of the theory that's in here, but like not fully expanded. But like that's kind of like how I want to go about it, guys. So yeah, that's just it. Like leave a comment about how you want to get it. I did it here because I thought it was about time I make some more Digimon content. I just haven't had time to like catch up with it yet. Because I've been trying to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Like more full swing of it, but I'm not stopping on Digimon. I would make card videos again for Digimon, but like I'm gonna be honest, guys, like I'm not the best at the game. So I'd rather someone who's like more experienced or like who knows it better. Like I usually go and watch like people like Evolve. Like I'll watch his streams for learning how to like play better when I see how he does tournaments or something. So like yeah, I also watch East. So shout out to anyone who watches East, if you know who I'm talking about from the Digimon card game world. He's like really cool and I like his stuff. But yeah. And then watch the DigiPanda. I like when he breaks open stuff. He shows you like different ratios and stuff. It helps you guys if you want to do sealed for Digimon. But like besides plugging these guys, like yeah. I'm going to do more Digimon content. It's just going to take time. And we'll get there slowly. Support Digimon content creators, guys. Like, it's really important because they're keeping the backbone of this thing going. People like Carney X, like people like that, like they're really pushing it. So I'd really like you to. Oh, and then Digimon Explained. Can't forget him. But yeah, that's all I've got today, guys. And yeah, this is just another off the cuff thing that's focused on Digimon. And I'm signing off. And for all of you out there to sign on.